You can listen to The Professional Left wherever you get your podcasts, on Netroots Radio, or at our website, proleftpod.com, where you can also contribute to this podcast. There's a PayPal button at our website, or you can mail us a letter and or contribution at Post Office Box 9133, Springfield, Illinois, 62791.
This is the podcast for March 11th, 2025. It's not safe for work.
This is recorded live from the Cornfield Resistance, where I was going to replace the gate on the back fence. I figured it should take maybe an hour or two at best. I mean, how hard could it possibly be? And then I took a very close look at the back fence and how it was built and how it was hinged and how it was weirdly put together. And oh my word, it's going to be a lot longer than 1 or 2 hours. It's The Professional Left with Trip Glass and Blue Gal.
He had to watch like 15 YouTube videos, and he had to go to Harbor Freight twice, and he had to go to Lowe's 2 times also.
Well, and the YouTube videos, which I did watch, because that's where I got the idea for the kit, which is a very helpful kit, is all predicated on the assumption that your existing fence is put together like a rational person would put together.
Like a sane person built it, yes.
And ours isn't. Ours has all these things that are like, but that's not supposed, oh God, and everything's in the wrong place, and everything is lopsided, and everything's screwed in weird, and blocks are shoved in sideways to provide spacing, none of which is anticipated in the YouTube videos on how to use the kit. So I am figuring out how to do this.
Whether that fence was originally put up in the 60s or the 80s,
yeah,
we know drugs were involved.
We do. We do. And it's and as long as it never changes, it's a fine fence. But it needs a replacement gate, and I have everything I need to do it. But suddenly I'm like, oh, this is okay. This is much harder.
Nothing
than I thought.
Is built on a square foundation, let's say.
Well, let's put it this way: the pickets aren't screwed into the posts; they're screwed into spacer bars between the posts and the pickets, which is fine, except all of the instructions are to put hinges into the post and not some imaginary spacer bar that shouldn't be there. So,
so you've had to remove all those.
No, I'm not going to remove them.
And rusted screws also,
I had to remove some stuff, but I have to put in things that compensate for the fact that the fence was not built correctly in the first place. Short of tearing the whole thing down and going, I'm just going to rebuild a good fence from scratch. Get me... And that'll take a month, given my current skill level.
And sinking posts is not something you want to do.
But what I wanted to, you know what made me think of this was, look, I have encountered something that is complex. It requires a certain degree of adaptation on my part to understand why this was done. And if I want it done correctly, I have to really kind of accommodate myself to the structure as it exists now, rather than as I wish it would be. The Doge approach would be to burn down every fence in the neighborhood and say,
yes, right.
I have saved you $400,000, and then walk away. And
fraud and abuse.
Yeah, I've fixed everything. It is all better now, and I've saved you.
And when the neighbors complain, you ask them why they're not wearing a suit.
No, you say, "Well, you're a traitor. You're a traitor.
You're a traitor."
Yeah. So fuck it. I'm just gonna figure it out.
You're gonna take your time with a scalpel.
Well, it's an IT problem.
Yeah.
You know, it's a weird IT problem. I got to, oh shit, why did they do this, and how is it done, and suss out the original intention and see if I can work around it and make it work the way I want it to work.
Move backwards before you move forwards. Yeah.
It's not that hard if you approach, kids, if you approach life's problems like that, as opposed to hammer it, chainsaw, it's all destroyed. So proceed from humility rather than like arrogant ignorance is my new watchword.
Well,
anyway,
you're fortunate in that, it's currently 71 degrees in Springfield.
I know.
So we've been blessed with nice weather.
I know.
And march in like a lamb, as they say.
It'll never last. And we should all weep for the fact that it won't last forever, Blue Gal.
I was at church this afternoon. We have a bi-weekly meeting of Stitch and Go, which is all the knitters.
It's a cult. Yeah.
And they were reminding everyone, because we're planning for the big rummage sale now.
Yep.
And they were reminding everyone that April 30th, 1987 was the biggest ice storm any of them could remember.
That's right.
And one person was without power for 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, you'd remember that. Like that date would be in your brain. But
Oh man,
sitting around church talking about 1987 weather,
yeah,
it's kind of
small
typical.
Small town. It's small town stuff.
Small town stuff. I want to wish John Amato, my boss at Crooks and Liars, a happy birthday today.
Yeah, happy birthday.
It is his birthday, and he survived the Pacific Palisades fire. His house burned to the ground. Mm-hmm. He has a GoFundMe up at which will be up at Crooks and Liars tonight. There'll be a link to it. So he's trying to put his life back together, and he's really doing well, like mentally and emotionally, taking one step at a time to do that. And I'm very proud of him. But we have to start off really with some sad news. Kevin Drum, who is an OG left of center blogger from back in the day. Absolutely. And he was the pioneer of cat blogging. Friday cat blogging was his thing.
Yeah.
He has passed away after a long battle with cancer at the age of 66, way too young. And Wikipedia notes that Drum initially rose to prominence through the popularity of his independent blog, Cal Pundit, which ran from 2003 to 2004. That's back in the day, folks.
Boy,
He later was invited to launch another blog, Political Animal, from 2004 to 2008 for the Washington Monthly.
Which we all read.
Yeah, and he held a writing and blogging position at Mother Jones from 2008 to 2021 before returning to the independent sphere with his Jabberwalking blog. And he will be missed.
He sure will be.
Gone too soon.
Sure will be.
And I am keeping a good thought for my sister, who is the middle child of our family.
Yeah.
She's having a heart valve replaced tomorrow.
Yeah.
And keep her in your thoughts if you do such things. Thank you.
Yeah. And
a lot going on is what I'm saying.
A lot going on. A lot of stuff that is not related to the fiasco at the federal level or the depravity of the Republican Party. Except the fact that, we bloggers have been around a long time.
Yeah.
A really long time. We're going to actually talk a little bit more about that further on down the road in this podcast. But I have learned from listening to a few prominent Democratic and Never Trump podcasts, which you all know by now, I've learned that they have pretty much given up trying to make a smooth transition from reporting on, the death of the Republic to live read ads for extremely soft sheets and extremely relaxing gummies and stuff you take when you're going to drink too much and you don't want to wake up with a hangover.
Yeah.
It is a bit of a whiplash, but they're doing it because the ad revenue is how they make their money. So you got to plow through the first 5 minutes of ads. And in the middle of something about, do you realize how bad this is? This is probably the end of democracy as we know it. But first, let's talk about sheets. It is disconcerting. So I feel
it is. It's hard to listen to. Yeah.
Well, and I feel less terrible about this extremely awkward transition from an obituary to a fake sponsor. In fact, it's all the rage now.
It's all the rage now to do these things, yes.
So,
but I did want you to bring back this particular fake sponsor.
You did.
I asked you to do this.
You insisted.
Yep.
And this is how we make our money from our fake sponsors. I make our fake money from our fake sponsors.
Fake money from our fake sponsors.
Which is also going to be a theme of the rest of this podcast, weirdly enough. So, excuse me, as I got to get into my ad reading voice. As the stock market under Trump has crashed, the fortunes of an old sponsor of ours have soared. So we felt we just had to bring back Hello Fascist, the at-home meal kit for Republicans, with a new testimonial from a Mr. J. Devon Vance of Washington, D.C.
Waiters hate me because I am a privileged cipher who likes to cause trouble and abandon America's allies just for kicks. I lived in dread that they may be secretly organizing a national day of urine to pee in my food wherever I go. But now, with Hello Fascist, I can stuff my face and insult the working class without fear.
That's right. Hello Fascist has expanded its mission to provide every current and former Trump administration stooge and enabler in America and all the radical lunatics he packed onto the courts and Musk's incel clown posse with fresh home-cooked meals, with no planning, no shopping, and no one calling you out for your moral depravity in public. Just ask these satisfied customers.
A Mr. K. Patel of Washington, D.C. says, previously dinner meant sneaking into a restaurant in disguise and hoping that no one would recognize me or my boots before my food had arrived. With Hello Fascist, Now I can try to fill the hole in my soul with deep-fried Twinkies and sour mash in peace.
A P. Hegseth, also of Washington, D.C., says that he was sick and tired of the woke mob peeing in my Cobb salad. I know that's not vinaigrette, hippie. So thank God for Hello Fascist. It's like a big, beautiful wall around my tiramisu.
And P. Bondi, also of Washington, D.C., says the champagne was as cold as Samuel Alito's heart and as delicious as the tears of terrified liberal children. Whether you're a Republican hiding out from an imaginary woke mob or a Republican canceling town hall meetings and hiding from your very own real and very pissed off voters, think Hello Fascist, because those people are definitely peeing in your food. Today we're going to talk about how the rope of crony capitalism binds asymmetrically. And it does.
It really does.
And to do that, we need to introduce you to a local radio guy named Sean. Mm-hmm. Sean is currently a St. Louis correspondent for ABC Radio. He was the news director at Neuhoff Communications, which is based about 5 miles from here in Southern View, Illinois. And he has been a show host or a news anchor on regional radio for decades. He knows the Central Illinois radio business. So Sean knows, as we all do, that on local radio powerhouse WMAY, you will find Brian Kilmeade, Dana Lash, Eric Erickson, and Janine Pirro.
Yep.
And on its closest competitor, WTAX, WTAX, you will find Glenn Beck, Sean Hannity, Mark Levin, Newsmax's own Chris Plant, Heck of a Job Brownie Michael Brown, Larry Kudlow, and a trio called Markley, Van Camp, and Robbins, who, in case you are unfamiliar, are 3 conservative mopes who advertise as Jamie Markley, the Gen Xer, David Van Camp, the millennial, and Scott Robbins, the baby boomer. And they go through the news the same way you and your friends would, according to their ad copy. Mm-hmm. On the weekends, you get best of roundups of the mopes you heard all week long. So you'll get a rerun of Hannity, etc.
Yeah. So basically, talk radio here is wall-to-wall conservative garbage all day, every day, all weekend. And everyone knows that conservative hate radio and local sports are absolutely the lifeblood of local radio. And all that other stuff that you can get on local radio, the gardening shows and the syndicated car advice shows and the sketchy financial advice shows, that's all filler. People tune in to hear conservatives praise the dear leader and call people like me and Blue Gal baby-killing, America-hating commie scum, just as they've been doing for going on 40 years now. So this isn't new information. So if you want to stay in the good graces of the listening public, especially in central Illinois, you do not poke the MAGA bear. Except this is starting to become a real problem because Apartheid Clyde and his Tesla chainsaw massacre is hurting people who voted for the dear leader or people whose family members voted for the dear leader. And since the dear leader is infallible and can do no wrong, you end up with stories like this breaking through even into the MAGA moron bubble.
And they're really working hard to try to make it not break through to the MAGA moron bubble.
Oh, it's...
There was a story just as we were going on air at Daily Beast saying that Biden was hiding the bad economic news. Mm-hmm. This is entirely created by Trump and his tariffs and Musk and his
chainsaw, his goddamn chainsaw. Yeah.
That's it.
And they are sandbagging faster than the rising Mississippi River coming to your farmland. They're just it's terrifying because all of the shit's happening way too fast for them to cope with. And it requires a certain amount of time to reprogram the morons to think the new things. And it's all happening too fast.
It's Biden's fault. He hid all this. He hid the bad economy.
The Biden recession is coming.
The Biden recession because Biden was hiding all the hiring and factories that he was supporting. Yes. Yeah. Anyway, okay. So here is what is breaking through. The headline from the Associated Press, quote, MAGA Republicans relish seeing federal workers getting canned, even when those cuts are insane and even when it's their own relatives, because it's a cult.
Well, you remember during COVID when I forget who it was, but it was saying, grandma should be willing to die for the economy. These are old people. They're fragile and they're going to die. And if they have to die, they should die for the good of Trump's economy.
It was people. Texas AG. Texas AG who said that. For the sake of the economy,
Greg Abbott.
Some grandmas are going to have to die. Yeah.
Yep.
Scrambling to replace their health insurance and to find new work, some laid-off federal workers are running into another unexpected unpleasantry, relatives cheering their firing. I've been treated as a public enemy by the government, and now it's bleeding into my own family, says 24-year-old Luke Tobin, who was fired last month from his job as a technician with the U.S. Forest Service in Idaho's Nez Perce National Forest. Tobin's job loss sent him scurrying to fill prescriptions before he lost his health insurance and filling out dozens of applications to find whatever work he can, even if it's at a fast food restaurant. But some relatives reacting to his firing as what has to happen to make the government great again has been one of the worst parts of the entire ordeal. They can't separate their ideology and their politics from supporting their own family and their own loved ones, says Tobin. Mm-hmm. My life is disintegrating because I can't work in my chosen field, says Kristen Jen, 47, from Austin, Texas. Lump on top of that, no support from family, it hits you very hard. The strife has extended to Jen's mother, a former federal employee herself. When she has criticized the administration's actions, her mother simply says she supports the president. She has somehow been convinced that public servants are a parasite and unproductive, even though she was a public servant, says Jen, unquote. And this article goes on at great length with many examples. We see this all the time with retired Illinois state workers, too.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Who have a generous pension, who are part of a union, who've had all of the benefits that come from working for the state of Illinois. And as far as they're concerned, the entire state of Illinois needs to be scrapped.
Right.
For the sake of Donald Trump and conservatism.
Right. Just keep the part.
When they're living off state pensions. Yeah.
You got to keep the part that writes checks to them every month. But other than that, the entire government in Illinois is bloated and corrupt and blah, blah, Democrats, demo-rats, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. Right. And don't get them started about Chicago.
No. Well, Chicago is just the worst city in the world. It's decadent and depraved. And of course, they all like to go up there to shop and see the shows. And
and go to restaurants.
Sure. But it's terrible. It's terrible. People just dying by the millions in the streets. Uh-huh. And this is where we bring in our longtime local radio person, Sean, because Sean gets it all wrong. This is from his Facebook page.
Yeah, and let's be clear. When Driftglass is quoting Sean, these are literal quotes that he wrote in his Facebook page.
Right. In response to this article about relatives saying, fine, I'm glad they cut your job. You're all a bunch of fucking parasites anyway.
Yeah. Of your own daughter.
Right. So this is longtime veteran radio person, Sean, on his Facebook page. And I'm going to intersperse it with my own comments, which you will see and hear in a minute. Quote, what a sick country, unquote. No, it's not the country, Sean. It's Republicans, Sean. It's Republicans. It's your Republican neighbors. It's your Republican friends. It's your Republican colleagues who voted for this shit. That's who's to blame, not the country. Moving on. Quote, these people better not blame Trump for this. They own this behavior, unquote. Okay, let me translate. The dear leader is flawless, and none of this grotesque behavior is his fault. Continuing, quote, there's no excuse. This has nothing to do with wings or who you voted for. Hey, if someone I care about loses their job, that they take priority. I wouldn't consider it whining if you lost your job, were devastated, and someone prioritizes politics over family. That equation stands up whether the job cutter is right or left, public or private sector. Whether you consider the federal government bloated or not. I have compassion for people who have had their dreams crushed, especially if they're family, unquote. Let me translate for you. I am definitely not going to take a position on anything that might offend anyone in the listening audience.
Right.
I will run like 60 to get the hell away from any position that might offend the Republicans who listen to me and who make up the large majority of the local radio audience.
And I'm going to pretend that the left is just as bad.
Right. Well, and we move on. Quote, it's not a left or right thing, unquote. Literally, this is this guy. And the fuck it's not, Sean, and you damn well know it, because you're not that stupid. Quote, hell, let's get away from politics. Under this umbrella, when I was in Cumberland, Maryland, and then unquote, because then Sean wanders into a story about a sports rivalry that some woman freaked out because the streamers at her kid's christening were the same color as a rival sports team, which is exactly the same as this, which has shit all to do with anything except Sean desperately trying not to talk about Trump letting Musk hog butcher his way through the federal workforce, and MAGA scum gloating over it even when it happens to their own family members. So no, let's not get away from politics, Sean, because this is 100% politics.
Yep.
Going back to Mr. Sean's Facebook article, quote, "You don't have to say, oh, I disagree with these cuts because you're family. You can silently think the cuts are the right thing to do and feel sympathy for a family member. One does not cancel out the other." Well, technically true, Sean, but come on. You expect a mob who proudly wore fuck your feelings t-shirts to Trump rallies to respect other people's feelings? Under what rock have you been asleep for the last 30 years? Quote, again, not about right or left, unquote. And again, the fuck it's not, and you fucking well know it. Quote, we're a nation running too much on emotion. I don't care if you're talking about going off on JFL referees, road rage, customer service complaints, or politics, unquote. Yeah, it sure is weird how people get all emotional about their civil rights being stripped away or their government being gutted by traitors. And by the way, where was all this everyone is too emotional talk as people like us are being slagged on local talk radio for being baby-killing communist scum on Fox News and hate radio for 30 fucking years? Where was all this concern then, Sean? Oh, yeah, that's just the default setting. So you don't challenge that. It's only when liberals punch back.
Yeah. Is Laura Ingram's show too emotional? Sean, can we talk about that? Where the left are everything that Satan represents? Is that too political for you? But then again, in the media, it's always been okay to slag liberals. It's only when liberals punch back or when the depravity going on inside the conservative media becomes so ugly that it leaks out into the general public that tone police start getting interested in everyone calming down or how we as a nation. And don't forget that such talk is divisive.
And controversial.
And controversial, but only when it comes from liberals. Only when it comes from non-MAGA, non-Republican sources.
Right. Then it's everybody needs to calm down.
Yeah. And MSNBC, by the way, asked today if Democrats should, and I am not making this up, Democrats should let the government shut down.
Well, to be fair.
That was the framing of it.
To be fair, it was Michael Steele on MSNBC.
Should Democrats let the government shut down? Because it's going to be 100% their responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah.
As
really.
David Gregory. I want to talk about the Democrats. When Republicans couldn't elect a speaker to save their lives, and we're like on ballot 17.
Why are Democrats letting this happen, Blue Gal?
We got to talk about the Democrats and what they're doing here. Yeah. No. Because that's the way it's always been. So we're going to do something kind of no fair remembering stuff today.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
We're going to take a deep dive into the archives back to 2005. Driftglass and I were both blogging then.
Nice round number, 20 years ago.
20 years ago. When liberal TV was virtually non-existent, having been stomped into oblivion by station management because it presented a difficult public face for NBC in the time of war. And if you think that a lot of what's going on with Trump right now is brand new,
welcome to the Bush administration.
You must be 15 years old.
Yeah.
Because 20 years ago, the pressure on media to, in a time of war, support George W. Bush unconditionally.
That's right.
Or you were a traitor to this country.
And how many of Dick Cheney's friends were profiting from that war obscenely?
And no bid contracts, the race for no bid contracts. I mean, this is Elon Musk is just ripping a page out of Dick Cheney's, handbook.
Yeah. Wait a minute. Is
do it in secret. Do it fast. Don't worry about the media. Just don't worry. Don't mention it. Don't talk about it. We're going to just take the contracts.
Wait a minute. Isn't that Liz Cheney's dad?
Yeah, it's Liz Cheney's dad.
Oh, man. That's so weird.
And then when it turned out that he made $26 million himself in profit, he quite publicly and correctly in terms of the dotting the T, crossing the T's and dotting the I's, donated that money to the hospital that gave him a heart.
Yeah. Yep.
Did his heart transplant.
But
so he didn't personally profit, but he didn't care because the thing was he was doling out no bid contracts
to his friends.
Yeah.
And don't forget that hundreds of millions of dollars in cash, literal pallet trucks of cash, were delivered to Iraq by the Bush administration and disappeared with no accounting, nothing. And people were having like play fights, throwing wads of money at each other in tents because they didn't know what to do with it. But that happened. All of that happened. And the press completely rolled over for it and attacked liberals for questioning. How dare you question the Bush administration during these difficult times?
And so I want you to understand that we have to guard against catastrophic thinking on our side.
Yes.
That there's no recovery from this, that we'll never get out of it, that, Donald Trump is destroying institutions, blah, blah, blah. We can fix all of this. I promise you we can fix all of this. Part of the way we fix it is that the media will just completely forget what happened.
Right.
And
move on.
And move on.
To quote...
and look at COVID.
To quote Don Draper talking to Peggy after she gave birth to her child and gave it away, you'll be shocked at how quickly this will be over. You'll move past this. You'll be shocked. You'll be shocked at how quickly this never happened.
This never happened.
Yeah, this never happened. Yep.
Yeah, and that's human nature in part.
Yep.
And part of that is the truly unhistorical, brain dead, brainwashing that our society engages in.
Well, and part of it is a demand on the part of Republicans that they never be held responsible for anything. Yeah. The demand for Republicans to never be held accountable for anything drives conservative media, which in turn drives legacy media to make sure that every bit of blame that still exists is allocated to both sides, just like our good friend Sean is doing up here.
Right. Let's not get too political here. So the media had to have a supportive public face in a time of war for George W. Bush, and the severed head of the Phil Donahue show was still on a pike outside MSNBC as a warning to anyone who dared cross the Bush regime. 20 years ago, when the fledgling Air America was still in that fragile phase between finding its voice and being improved to death by the ham fists of death of Mark Green. And then in the middle of all of this virtually uncontested conservative Sturm und Drang, smack at the intersection of free speech, Rush Limbaugh, Andrew Sullivan, ad boycotts, and kicking Michael Steele in the balls came this. From the Washington Post, October 28th, 2005.
Yeah,
quote,
strap in, people.
Strap in. Quote, blog attack on Steele decried. A racially charged image of Maryland Lieutenant Governor Michael S. Steele on the website of a liberal blogger brought recriminations from both Democrats and Republicans yesterday. The doctored photo of Steele, Republican, as a minstrel and accompanying slurs prompted Virginia gubernatorial candidate Timothy M. Kaine, Democrat, to pull an ad from the site, stevegilliard.blogspot.com. Kaine's campaign had purchased the space through a broker that put his advertising on numerous liberal-leaning blogs. More than that, the posting sparked a broad and heated discussion, much of it on other blogs, about the evolving role of the internet in politics, and even about the ability of bloggers to maintain fierce independence while depending on advertising revenue.
Aha.
Right. Not surprisingly, the strongest reaction came from Steele, who recently announced a bid for the U.S. Senate seat being vacated by Senator Paul S. Sarbanes, Democrat, which he didn't win. The Democratic Party has finally reached a new low with the worst kind of racist gutter politics, and it's the kind of racism that people in Maryland reject regardless of their political party, said Leonardo Alcivar, the campaign spokesman.
Notice how, yeah.
All of a sudden, Steve Gilliard's blog is speaking for and being represented by the entire Democratic Party.
And it's important to point this out because this has been the Fox News hate radio business model for 30 years now, not just 20. You find something somebody said somewhere on the left, and that becomes the entire Democratic Party.
Right.
And then you rely on your allies like Joe Walsh to say, this is what Democrats do all the time. But it's literally one person saying one thing in one corner. One Democrat, one liberal saying one thing about the Democratic Party, and that's the entire party. The converse is the entire Republican Party can be depraved, lunatic, brainwashed, racist scum, and it's just the action of the fringes. Just ignore it. It's just the action of a few people. And that's the business model. I'm sorry, I interrupted, but yeah.
That's all right. Democrats disavowed any connection to the news blog, which typically includes liberal political content. The site is maintained by New Yorker Steve Gilliard, who is African American. And you said that this was at the point when a lot of people all of a sudden realized that Steve Gilliard was African American.
They were,
right?
and later on in our discussion, we're going to talk about Andrew Sullivan.
Okay.
And how Andrew Sullivan didn't realize, a bunch of people didn't realize that Digby was a woman and Steve Gilliard was black, and they reacted that way. And it was hilarious and cringy the way they clearly had no idea who the fuck they were talking about. But all of this came in reaction to Andrew Sullivan bawling out Steve Gilliard. Yeah. That's what elevated the story to the level of Michael Steele saying the entire Democratic Party are a bunch of racist scum who are out to get me.
Yeah. And Andrew Sullivan made his bones by posting viral content and being the place you could find viral video.
Yeah.
And then interspersed with a bunch of conservative stuff. So the news blog has been up for 2 years. Steve Gilliard estimates that it gets about 15,000 hits a day. The Steele depiction was extremely offensive and distasteful and has no place in politics or in any other aspect of public discourse, said Derek Walker of the Maryland Democratic Party. Joe Trippi, who is credited with using the internet to reinvent campaigning while managing Howard Dean's 2004 presidential bid, and who was advising Democratic Senate candidate Kwasi Mfume, said the incident highlights a pitfall of the medium. But he said he was shocked that Steele would blame Democrats. I'm not shocked.
No, of course not.
That's almost as bad as what the website did. Try to smear an entire party with what one random person threw up on the web, Trippi said. Gilliard defended the item in an interview, saying, and here's the substance of the matter, Steele invited the portrayal by failing to criticize Governor Robert L. Ehrlich Jr.'s decision to hold a fundraiser at an all-white country club. So this is one black man calling another black man a minstrel and Uncle Tom, et cetera, over all-white country clubs.
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of thing, this is Gilliard, that's the kind of thing that says to black voters that black Republicans are untrustworthy and unreliable, said Steve Gilliard. Okay, so that's the real conversation that's going on. Mm-hmm. Other liberal bloggers defended Gilliard and took after Kane for pulling his ad. Marcos Melitsas, editor of the blog Daily Kos, said that advertisers should expect edgy content and that Kane's actions could threaten their editorial independence. I don't want bloggers to be afraid to say things because they don't want to offend advertisers, Melitsas said, unquote.
I just want to mention that this took place because Michael Steele lost that race. Yeah. He never rose higher than lieutenant governor. But 3 years later, Democrats would nominate and elect a black man as president. Mm-hmm. And that's when the incredibly racist Republican Party scrambled trying to find a black man to put in front of their party to prove that they're not racist. We got one too. And that's when they hired Michael Steele to be their front man.
Yep.
And that's when Michael Steele started saying all kinds of stupid, crazy shit about the racists being gone from the party. And it used to be bad, but they're all Democrats now. And jobs aren't really jobs if they're government jobs. It got so bad that The Daily Show, Jon Stewart started mocking him with a puppet because he used to go on The Daily Show all the time until he took up with the leadership of the Republican Party. Right. Michael Steele, this was also the time when Michael Steele had said some mildly critical things of Rush Limbaugh. Rush
Oh,
Limbaugh
yeah.
dropped a fucking house on him, and Michael Steele went groveling back to Rush Limbaugh begging forgiveness.
To apologize, yes.
Proving that Steve Gilliard's depiction was not entirely inaccurate.
And who had the real power within the Republican
exactly,
Party.
who was running the Republican Party. This is my question for all of our Never Trump friends. As far back as then, it was clear that Rush Limbaugh was running your party.
Yeah.
How the fuck did you notice that? Or didn't you care? Yeah. So that's all a little bit of side history to what we're talking about now. But this that we're talking about right now, back in 2005, all took place after an initial dust-up, which included a series of shrill denunciations by right-wing pundits who hilariously had no idea that Gilliard was, black, which included Andrew Sullivan. Remember Andrew Sullivan?
Yeah.
Giving the story really long legs by posting it at his very well-trafficked site under the heading of The Racist Left.
Yep.
And one thing I do remember very well was that almost no one thought the idea of an advertiser yanking their ads away from controversy was in any way controversial. Now I'm going to quote New York Times employee Ezra Klein, back when Ezra Klein was just another blogger on TypePad. Good God. Remember TypePad? Anyway,
yeah,
quote,
I do.
Gilliard dresses Michael Steele up as a black-faced minstrel. Kane's campaign pulls ads. Sounds about right to me. Coase and Gilliard are, at most times, hard-nosed, realistic guys, and they were and are. Or Coase is. Gilliard has passed away. They know what the stakes are, and they know how the smears work, and they know what Republicans will do. Coase is worried about a chilling effect. Concerned bloggers will censor themselves for ad money. Well, yes, if you open yourself up to ads, you're going to have to be a bit careful when trotting around controversial topics. You can get around that by not accepting campaign ads, seeking out more aggressive advertisers, or letting folks pull ads when you want to paint people in blackface. I think Gilliard went a bit too far, but I don't advertise on his site, and I don't really care what he does. I do, however, understand that advertising is a business, and were I an advertiser, I would not have had the same laissez-faire liberties. Gilliard might have been right on the merits with Steele, and he fucking well was. But you're in dangerous territory when you paint anyone as a minstrel, whatever color you are. And you know where campaigns never want to be? Dangerous territory. Blogging is, as Gilliard said, a business. So is politics. Gilliard can say whatever he wants, and advertisers can pull whenever they want. Gilliard got too controversial. Kane's sponsorship would have looked bad in the newspapers, and Kane's campaign backed away. Good on everyone. Gilliard isn't censoring himself, and the Kane operation is remaining disciplined, and we can all go home friends. If we want folks to keep buying ads and we want to keep speaking our minds, and God knows we do, some will slip through our fingers. Rejoice. It just proves you're not a tool yet. Unquote.
Yet. Yep.
Yet.
Even the late Steve Gilliard understood that the Kane campaign was well within its rights to pull their ad. Instead, he was pissed that they didn't bother to ask his side of the story first. They just reacted to Andrew Sullivan, which, that's how the legacy media works. This is from Steve Gilliard's blog. Quote, I've worked in campaigns. I know they would have pulled the ad just to avoid controversy by association, which I agree with. I don't want anyone to think I expected them to keep the ad up after the crap they got. I'm hardly that full of myself. I'm not going to censor myself, but they don't have to keep their ads on if it hurts them. Although that seems to be okay for Republicans.
Aha. The penny drops.
Yeah. But this is ridiculous. How many blogs will be attacked this way? No one pulls ads from the racist Michelle Malkin or Little Green Footballs. Hell, Charles Johnson is forming pajamas media with people like David Korn. But we're supposed to be supine when something comes up. Look, I know I write things which sometimes make people squirm. And I certainly didn't expect any advertiser to endorse my words. But what I do expect is to be treated like an adult, unquote. Back over on TypePad, one of Ezra Klein's commenters noted that the liberal grassroots learned once again how the real world really works. And as true as this was in 2005, it's 100 times more true now. Quote, politicians have to remember, this is really wonderful. Just listen carefully to this quote.
Yep.
Politicians have to remember the value of bloggers like Gilliard. The GOP would never make this mistake. No matter how controversial Rush Limbaugh may be, GOP politicians would never consider distancing themselves from him. Staying loyal in the face of controversy can send a message to the grassroots that you believe in the movement and will fight for the cause. I wish more Democratic politicians understood this. Wow.
And that really is the key to it. And that was 20 years ago. And it's only gotten worse. It really, I mean, now we have President Rush Limbaugh, basically.
Yeah.
And you have the entire Republican Party, the entire conservative media refusing to back away from him, refusing to do anything but remain dog loyal to him, even though most of them know that he's a monster and a lunatic and a crook and a thug and a
Well, we don't have time to talk about what Gavin Newsom is doing.
No.
What the hell? You know, kicking trans people under the bus, meeting with Charlie Kirk, and he seems to think that he's going to be able to bring the country together without going through the Democratic primary process, which is entirely about the Democratic base who gives a shit about trans rights.
I don't know. There's still third way, Blue Gal. There's still no labels. I mean, you know, they could swing in and get.
Hey, professional left audience, can you hear my eyes rolling through the microphone?
I know. But this really is, I mean, the GOP, since they built their own media system, doesn't fucking care what the legacy media says.
No.
They care when something so insane, like relatives gloating over their own children getting their jobs cut, leaks out into the public. And then, you know, local area guy Sean has to pipe up and say, this isn't about left or right. This is about
Don't
being
get political. Don't get emotional.
This is too emotional. But in this one paragraph from this one commenter is the entire future of the Republican Party, which is no matter how far the lunatic right goes, they will never be disavowed by the party. And eventually you get someone like Trump. You keep jacking this thing up. You keep spinning this thing faster and faster. Eventually something like Trump's going to pop out, which is what we said 20 years ago.
Yeah.
That if you keep this up, if you keep backing off from your advocates and your best allies, trying to please the legacy media, while people on the right have no trouble kissing Rush Limbaugh's ass, the head of the RNC, groveling to Rush Limbaugh for forgiveness. That's how much power Limbaugh has over them. That eventually this is going to happen. And here it is. And here's what happened. Anyway, this is what I wrote on my blog, because I went to the archives to find this stuff, 20 years ago. This is what I wrote 20 years ago. Neither the difficulty of the enterprise nor the timorousness of many of our allies relieves us of our obligation to fight on. But if we ever expect to carry the day, we absolutely must take the vocabulary of the battle space back from those who have defiled it. If we are in this to win, to drive the bad guys back into their political sewers so we can begin to heal all that they have crippled and rebuild all they've destroyed, then we will need to upend the tables of our media money changers. I know. I went all Bible bitch.
You went all Bible bitch there for a minute. Yes, you did.
Before there was a Bible bitch, I went there. And that means despite the inevitability of collateral damage to the advertising revenues of liberals in the media, conservatives and their centrist enablers need to be kicked where it hurts over and over and over and over again. Because if we do not do this, if we do not take back the terms of engagement from those who have made it a mere profit center, then we are doomed to live forever in the world described by Charlie Pierce. Quote, "This is what happens when the people running politics accept as axiomatic that spin is everything. This is what happens when, because of that, courage is defined by keeping your job."
Yep.
And that is, in fact, the world we live in now.
Yep.
Where courage on the right is defined by doing whatever you need to do to keep your job. And courage in the legacy media means, you know, the extremes on both sides really have to be taken into consideration. You know, it's tribal, Blue Gal. It's neither left nor right. And I am so fucking sick of this because we've been at this for 20 years and it's only gotten worse.
Yeah. Drift Class, what would happen to a Matt Schlapp on the left?
Oh, he'd be gone.
Disappeared, literally.
He'd gone. No, I can't
fired.
even. I'm an imaginative person. I can't imagine a degenerate like that surviving on the left at all.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know I don't know even what the question means. I can't frame it in my mind.
No,
because
I know.
there is, but
it's not the gay part. It's the sexual assault part I'm talking about.
Well, and that's the thing. It's they have cast out Ukraine and welcome back Andrew Tate with open arms.
Right.
This is and this sort of obscene perversion of what it means to be a man. That you have to be an obnoxious asshole and a rapist practically. And you have to treat women like shit, and you have to reassert your dominance like you're a Roman centurion. That's the new masculinity.
Well, and Matt Schlapp hasn't done any of that. He's gone and tried to I don't know, rub himself up against gay men in a bar. He so clearly wants to be caught.
Doesn't matter.
And
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
There's an R after his name. There's an R after his name.
Yes,
Lindsey Graham is clearly, there's something going on with Lindsey Graham's past that Lindsey Graham really doesn't want anyone to talk about. Right. And that most of the gay people that I am familiar with on the right have to know about. To know about. And they will not talk about it because I guess that's still off limits. You know what? Nothing's off limits anymore. If you know shit about Republicans, come out now and say it. It is your obligation to do so. There's no more honor with these people because they don't know honor. They will break every treaty, they'll break every contract, and they'll stab you in the back.
And Donald Trump is blackmailing all of them.
Yeah.
By the way, that bathroom full of documents clearly had FBI files on fellow Republicans.
Yeah, and that's how you stay in power.
That's how you stay in power.
But this shit is medieval.
That's why no one's saying shit about anything he's doing.
Yeah, this shit is medieval. And the way you fight medieval thinking is with the Enlightenment, and that's what they want to get rid of. Anyway,
Drift Class, we're going to do a quick news roundup. Shadow President Elon Musk on Fox Business yesterday out loud said most of federal spending is entitlements, so that's the big one to eliminate.
You know what that means?
Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid.
That's right.
Musk also claims 10% of federal expenditures are due to people having fake Social Security numbers, and then he claimed that is $500 billion, which is a lie. That has been debunked so many times that a second shift had to be brought in to keep slapping it down. Now,
I have great news for Democrats. Dime Store Moses doesn't need you one little bit, not one little bit. This is from House Speaker Mike Johnson. We'll have the votes. We're going to pass the CR. We can do it on our own, which is great. So, okay, quit bitching that Democrats won't go along with you then. If you have the votes, if you run everything, then shut up and quit whining. Just do it.
Yep.
And watch what happens at the midterms. Just watch.
Yeah. From Manu Raju on the shitter, which was, I don't know how anyone read the shitter yesterday because it was down for hours, but GOP Rep Thomas Massie, who Trump threatened to back a primary challenge against because of his opposition to the GOP spending bill, told me last night of his party's support for the plan. Get this. This is Thomas Massie, Republican. Mm-hmm. I guess deficits only matter when we're in the minority. Dick Cheney could have told you that.
Yeah. Reagan could have told you that.
Reagan could have told you that.
In fact, Cheney's excuse was Reagan taught us
deficits don't matter.
Yeah, and they never did.
And they don't.
And this is what came as a colossal surprise to every Never Trumper that the entire base of the party never believed any of the shit that those people valued so very highly. They never cared about diversity. They never cared about the rule of law. They never cared about international relations or U.S. standing in the world. They never cared about deficits. How do you build an entire fucking party of people like that and not notice that they actually don't give a shit about anything you care about?
Nope. Not if it affects them personally. They don't give a shit about deficit.
Yeah.
Spend away. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is from the Wall Street Journal. Hollywood pivots to programming for Trump's America. Whether it's a show featuring Tim Allen, who has made no secret of his admiration for the president, Bill Maher interviewing Trump backer Kid Rock on his real-time HBO show, or A&E bringing back Duck Dynasty, Hollywood is serving some red meat to the red states. Flint, the guy who wrote this or was interviewed for this, writes, yesterday brought two new examples. Netflix ordered a batch of specials from Tony Hinchcliffe, the comedian and podcaster who told racist jokes at Trump's Madison Square Garden rally last October. Oh, that's going to be awesome.
That guy.
And Amazon Prime Video acquired the streaming rights to the first 7 seasons of The Apprentice. Oh, Jesus. As Liam Riley wrote here, The Apprentice pact came just a couple of months after Amazon paid a reported $40 million for a Melania Trump documentary. Yeah. Fortunately,
Wow.
well, let them enjoy. Let them enjoy watching their porn. That's fine. That's fine. We had the West Wing, so I guess we can't complain too much about porn for,
I agree with that.
Yeah.
You did have the West Wing.
Yeah, which was not, which set a bad example. Let's put it that way.
This is from the Chicago Sun-Times, quote, Midwest TSA agents left with questions amid contract cancellation. Boy, this brings back memories of Reagan firing the air traffic controllers.
Yeah.
The federal government has canceled a 7-year contract with the union representing about 47,000 TSA agents. Local units are taking the brunt of the hit as the government has stopped collecting and passing on union dues, Midwestern union leaders say. Chicago area TSA union workers are left with nothing but questions after the Department of Homeland Security abruptly canceled the union's 7-year contract that was signed last year. The American Federation of Government Employees, which represents 800,000 federal employees nationwide, including TSA workers, said the order would strip collective bargaining rights from about 47,000 transportation security officers across the country, unquote.
Making air travel unsafe on the ground and in the air.
This wouldn't have happened under Mayor Pete.
Nope. According to Bloomberg, billionaires at Trump's swearing in have collectively lost about $209 billion since then. So
yeah, it's all in the market. So
bye-bye. Bye-bye now.
And when you've lost Ruth Marcus from the New York Times, quote, Ruth Marcus, a columnist and editor for the Washington Post opinion section, said Monday she was leaving the newspaper after Will Lewis, the paper's publisher, killed a column she wrote that was critical of the editorial page's new direction. Marcus said the rejection of her piece underscores that the traditional freedom of columnists to select the topics they wish to address and say what they think has been dangerously eroded, unquote. You tell me about Ruth Marcus, Driftglass.
Yeah, Ruth Marcus, in my experience, having seen her swapped in at the NewsHour and other places, she's basically David Brooks in a dress. Mm-hmm. And when David Brooks in a dress gets up on their hind legs and starts talking about the freedom of columnists and journalism, things are going drastically wrong because that is not the lane they want to be driving in. Also, I hear they're changing the motto of the Washington Post to One Direction. So maybe that's just me. Now they're coming after Act Blue. Golly, I wonder why, Blue Gal. This is from Kamala Harris. Quote, over the past few months, Republicans have escalated their attack on an unlikely target, Act Blue, the platform Kamala Harris and many Democrats use to receive campaign contributions. The far-right has threatened bogus investigations into Act Blue, and over the weekend, Elon Musk fired off a bunch of tweets about massive scandal, which doesn't exist. But why are they going after Act Blue, and why now? Republicans are attacking Act Blue because small dollar donors from people like you are a major advantage for Democratic campaigns up and down the ballot. They also provide a huge amount of support organizing to stop Trump's agenda. And they know that if they can harm or degrade your ability to make those donations, it becomes easier for billionaires like Elon Musk to buy elections and harder for us to stop Trump's agenda, unquote. Now, this is part of a fundraiser that we got from Kamala Harris's fight campaign. But the crux of the matter is still true. They're going after Act Blue because they do not like what Act Blue does. And they're going after it to distract from the fact that Win Red, as you pointed out 1,000 times, Blue Gal, is actually corrupt. And
actually corrupt, actually hiding their financials from states' attorney general, and no one knows where the profits go.
No. Well, we kind of
although we have a really good idea.
We think we know. And it's also
I think we also know who controls who gets to use Win Red. And I find it really interesting that Mitch McConnell at the Senate Senate Campaign Committee, the Republican Senate Campaign Committee, does not use Win Red.
Right. Because it's Trump who can turn that spigot off and on.
Right.
And that's money. That's real money for real campaigns. That's money
that Mitch McConnell wants to control.
Right.
He doesn't want Trump to control it. So this is just 2020 all over again, too.
Yeah.
Where you accuse your opponent of that of which you are guilty so that, their sword is dulled fighting you over your battle with election integrity or, Act Blue. We're going to fight Act Blue being so corrupt. And then when Red is actually corrupt, it's like, well, both sides,
Well, yeah, but you know how it is.
Yeah. All right. The U.S., this is disgusting. The U.S. has been added to the international watch list for rapid decline in civic freedoms. Civicus, an international nonprofit, puts the United States of America on the bad list alongside Democratic Republic of Congo, Italy, Pakistan, and Serbia.
That was bad. This is worse. From Montana right now, the United Nations General Assembly passed a resolution last week designating an International Day of Hope. That's great, right, Blue Gal? Let's just stop right there. Let's just stop the story right there and not read on. But we must. President Donald Trump's U.S. contingent at the UN voted against the measure, which promoted universal peace, practicing tolerance, and living together in peace as good neighbors, which to Trump is like the devil taking a holy water enema. That is the worst thing in the world you could possibly want. The U.S. was, in fact, the only country to vote against designating July 12th as the International Day of Hope. The measure passed with 161 countries voting for, 4 abstentions, India, Turkey, Peru, and Paraguay, and 1 in opposition, the United States. The Day of Hope resolution also recognized the need to be more inclusive, equitable, and balanced approach for economic growth that promotes sustainable development, poverty eradication, happiness, and hopes for all peoples, unquote.
From the Hill, this is my favorite feud of the week.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Senator Mark Kelly, Democrat of Arizona, hit back at tech billionaire Elon Musk after Musk called Kelly a traitor on Twitter for visiting Ukraine and demanding the United States stand with Ukrainians in their ongoing war with Russia. Elon, if you don't understand that defending freedom is a basic tenet of what makes America great and keeps us safe, maybe you should leave it to those of us who do, he wrote on the social platform X on Monday, which it was down all day practically. So, not a lot of people could read, at least in the morning. But it was on Monday in response to Musk's accusation, "You are a traitor," unquote. Kelly is a former U.S. Navy combat pilot, toured a military hospital, and interacted with Red Cross personnel during his visit to Ukraine. It was his 3rd visit to the country since 2023. Musk, on the other hand, managed to dodge the South African draft with his mommy's help by yeeting off to Canada and enrolling in some college courses that it appears he never finished.
Yeah, he's just the worst. Honestly, he is the top of my worst list. Mm-hmm. From NBC Channel 5 in Chicago, my former hometown, a ray of light. Drawing huge crowds, Bernie Sanders steps into leadership of the anti-Trump resistance. Excellent. Bernie Sanders is standing alone on the back of a pickup truck shouting into a bullhorn. He's facing several hundred ecstatic voters huddled outside a suburban Detroit high school, the group that did not fit inside the high school's gym or 2 overflow rooms. The crowd screams in delight when he tells them that a combined total of 9,000 people had showed up for the rally. What all this tells me is it's not just Michigan or in Vermont. The people of this country will not allow us to move towards oligarchy. They will not allow Trump to take us into authoritarianism. Sanders yelled, "We are prepared to fight and we're going to win." At 83 years old, Sanders is not running for president again, but the stooped and silver-haired Democratic socialist has emerged as a leader of the resistance to Donald Trump's 2nd presidency. Amen.
Amen. Good crowds, too. Like really big crowds. That's a good thing. So everybody feel free to write to both of us at proleftpodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from you. Be aware that if you write to us at any of our addresses, we reserve the right to read your email or U.S. Postal Service. Go Postal Unions. Letter on the air unless you say otherwise.
Don't forget our gourmet coffee guidelines and stop being so emotional. Just send us money. Just send us that money. This is why we don't have advertisers, because we don't want them to pull their ads from us when we say things like that.
They pull their ads every day.
Boom, gone. That's why it's just freshly poured and hello fascist. Those are the only two who stick with us through thick and thin. And you guys, that's the point. That really is the point. Mm-hmm. So if you can afford to buy an espresso-based beverage for yourself, please buy one for us. This isn't charity. This is in fact our job, and we've been at it for about 20 years now. Mm-hmm. Not this podcast, but the writing about politics and discussing the media and so forth. If you can spare $5 a month, please spare $5 a month at patreon.com/proleftpod. And another important thing that you could not do in 2005, but you can do it now, share our show on social media. And if you love this podcast, please get someone else to listen to. And thank you so very much for doing that.
We want to also thank listener Glenn from coming down to Springfield and having lunch with us.
We had a lovely time.
Yeah,
we really did. Guy, lovely time.
Any of you who are in Springfield if you come to Springfield and you want to have coffee or lunch with us, just reach out at our email address, proleftpodcast@gmail.com.
Mm-hmm.
Subject line lunch or subject line coffee will get our attention.
Sure.
And we'll make it happen.
Yeah.
Hey, Driftglass, how are the Internet Kitties doing this week?
Oh, this is kind of personal, Blue Gal. The Internet Kitties might be looking to add one more to their number, which means we will be hopelessly outnumbered.
Yeah, we're already outnumbered.
Yeah, but
with 3.
At 4.
But there's a fourth one has been visiting our Olive at the front door.
Yes.
Which is how Olive moved in.
Right, exactly. That's well, and we made a joke about the hobo sign, right? The
hobo sign. The hobo sign for kind woman lives here is a cat drawn on the dirt.
So somewhere out on the curb, one of the cats has written in chalk a picture of a cat because a kind woman does live here.
Yeah.
And so there are 3 different striped gray cats that are circling us. One is owned sort of by a neighbor, we're pretty sure.
Yeah, they let him outside, but
and the other
he has
2
a collar.
Are related. Yeah. I think there's some guy in the neighborhood, some striped gentleman in the neighborhood who's been having way too good a time. But one appears to be a pretty healthy kitty. And if we can ever catch it, because it's pretty quick, we're going to take it to the vet, take it to the animal rescue place and have them check it for chips.
We have a plan in place should this cat ever allow us close enough to pick him up.
It will accept food out by the front door. It'll even get up close enough occasionally to let you scritch it on the chin with one finger. Then it runs. So but that's our plan, and it'll make us a 4-cat household. And we realize what that means to our social standing, and we're going to be the cat people. And we'll
be the crazy cat house, but
we don't care.
No,
we just don't care. It's a sweet little animal, and we are that family, and we're happy to do it if it will cooperate with our sneaky plan.
Yeah.
Anyway, love you, Blue Gal.
Yeah, love you too. And everybody have a good couple days. We'll be back on Thursday.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Let's think about living. Think about living. Let's think about loving. Think about loving. Let's think about the hooping and the hopping and the popping and the loving, lovey-dovey. Let's forget about the wine and the crying, the shooting and the dying, and the fellow with the switchblade knife. Let's think about living. Let's think about life.
The Professional Left podcast is recorded under a Creative Commons license. Copyright 2024-25, GGBG Productions.